Welcome to episode 32 of The Mobile Classroom, the weekly video podcast where we demonstrate today's most popular technologies. Our topic for this week is internet filtering, and I'm going to use a technology from a company called OpenDNS that focuses on doing internet filtering based on the URLs that you happen to go to. People do this for a lot of different reasons. One of the first is if you have children in the house or you have a group of people and you want to make sure that the information that they see in their browser is filtered. This is a great way to do this because with OpenDNS, you can manage exactly what people are seeing inside of their browser, and you can set priorities and allow or disallow entire categories of content from being shown to them. Maybe you don't want to really stop anything, or maybe you'd like to watch this over time and see exactly what people are doing on the network. Especially if you have a lot of computers in the house, there's a lot of people using these computers, you may want to look at the last week and see where were people going, what websites were the most popular. Is anybody, or my children, for instance, going to websites that perhaps I feel they should not be going to? We can do a lot of after-the-fact reporting on those things. A lot of people are also very concerned about privacy, and they may see a message pop up in their email that says, your bank account has been compromised. You'll need to log in here to see what's happened, or you need to log in here to enable the access to your account again. But the reality is that's just a bad guy trying to get your username and password. It's a very common technique called phishing with a PH. There's also scammers that like to do that to get access to your personal information. So OpenDNS is great because it has an entire category and it tracks what websites are doing these types of scams. And if you try to visit one of those websites, even accidentally or unknowingly, it will tell you, wait, you don't want to go here. This is a scam site and you want to avoid going there at all costs. And lastly, perhaps you want to avoid going to websites that have known spyware. So a website is compromised or a website has been built just for you to visit it so that it can give you spyware. That's a normal method that these scammers will use to get adware and spyware on your computer. You may want to use that, the OpenDNS, to be able to filter out all the websites that might have malicious software on them or that might infect you with malicious software. You can do all of this with OpenDNS. I'll show you exactly how that's done in this episode. I'll show you how to install DNS and get it running in your environment. You may have a single computer or you may have a router that's in your environment, and you may want to make sure that that computer and the router and anything that's inside your home network or even your business network is protected and filtered. And we do that through installing OpenDNS. I'll show you how to install it on the router that I have here in my home office, but it's very common to use this in large environments as well. And interestingly enough, it's almost exactly the same method in a huge environment as it is in a smaller environment. My equipment is just a little bit tinier. My router and my switch just a little bit smaller than what you might use in an enterprise environment. I'll also show you how you can choose particular categories and filter out different kinds of content. So you can decide exactly what people should be able to see. I'll also show you how to override those. So if you are blocking a category, but there's one website in there that's really okay, you can enable that individual website while still keeping the rest of the category from anybody being able to see it. So we'll customize and change a few of these things with what we call whitelists and blacklists to make sure that we can access those. And lastly, I'll go through some of the capabilities for logging. We'll look through some reporting. I'll show you how you can view what's really been going on your network over time, and you can look at it over a very long period to determine, are there other things that I should be blocking or other things that I should be allowing on my network? OpenDNS works with something called the domain name system. The DNS name is right in the name of OpenDNS. And this is really a critical part of what we do on the internet because it provides us with a very important capability, which is taking these names that we are accustomed to using, like google.com, and turning it into something that our computer can understand and communicate with over the internet. On the internet, every device has an IP address. And behind the scenes, even though we're using names like google.com, our computer's really talking to a very specific address, just like you would dial a phone number. I don't really type into my phone that I want to call Bill. I type into my phone that I'd like to call number 867-5309, and it calls Bill. So that's the type of thing that we're accustomed to seeing on our telephone Interestingly enough, it works almost exactly the same way on the computer. For instance, if we type in a browser www.google.com, we're really going to this IP address of 74.125.67.99. Now, our computer and the DNS naming process all happens behind the scenes. You never see it. But the reality is that our computer is going out to a DNS server, probably at our ISP, and saying, do you know where google.com is? I'm looking for www.google.com. And that DNS server responds back, goes, sure, I know that. In fact, in the case of Google, it gets a big list of IP addresses. And one of those might be 74.125.67.99. And now our computer from that point on knows that anytime I type in www.google.com, it will always go to this IP address. That's the DNS process. If we can use a third party like OpenDNS to provide us with that name resolution, well, in that particular case, the OpenDNS can protect us from websites that are malicious and filter out websites that perhaps we don't want people in our network to go to. Very simple to be able to provide this. And the fact that it's even free through OpenDNS for the basic capabilities is just another advantage to put on top of that. This is the OpenDNS website. When we go here, you'll see a lot of different options across the top of the OpenDNS.com website. There's an option for dashboard. We're going to look at the dashboard once we log into our OpenDNS account. There's also a very active community online. There's a knowledge base. There's forums. There's a lot of great information to gather. If you wanted to learn more about what's going on behind the scenes or how can I customize this a little bit differently, you can go to that community tab and you can find a lot of information there. If you do not currently have an OpenDNS account, you can click Create Account. It's going to ask for some very specific information of the type of OpenDNS service that you would like. They have an absolutely free and very, very useful functionality in the OpenDNS Basic. A lot of great capabilities here that can do the DNS lookups, the web content filtering, phishing, some customization, even corrections to typos that you might make. If you click the sign up there, it will take you to a page where you can put in your username and password that you choose. You can also decide on other things here and look through the terms of service and click the continue button, and you'll have created an account. Later on, you may even want to go through. I'll back up a page here and you can see you may want to choose the OpenDNS Deluxe, which even then, if you are a household, it's only $10 a year, where it gets rid of any of the advertisements on the OpenDNS search pages. There's some advanced customization that you can do and some nice capabilities for whitelisting data. If you want to really break it down, they've got a nice overview here of the three different types: the basic, the deluxe, and the enterprise. It's really nice that this enterprise capability is also available. If you're a home user, you're essentially getting exactly the same filtering functionality that an enterprise has. So you've now got something that's designed for very, very large environments, and you're able to take that power and use it at home. When you first set up your account at OpenDNS, it takes you through the process of using OpenDNS in your environment. Now, one of the things you'll notice that on every page on OpenDNS, down here at the bottom, it says our name servers are always 208.67.222.222 and 208.67.220.220. If you are using a computer by itself and you're not connecting through a router, you're not getting perhaps your IP addressing from somewhere else, you're using just a computer directly connected to the internet, first, that's probably a bad idea because you would like to be more protected than that. Ideally, you would have one of these types of routers, which also act as firewalls in your home. If you don't have one already, you should absolutely very first consider getting one of those, if only to protect your system from all the bad guys that are out on the internet. If you're doing this locally on your own computer, though, there are some programs that can help you, some views on these OpenDNS screens that can help you go to the right part of your computer to manually change these DNS server names inside of your network configuration. For instance, if you're in Windows, I'm going to pop my network and sharing center up here real quick. I'm going to go to my adapter settings. I have quite a few adapters in here, but if you look at the properties of one of these adapters, you can see that I have an IP version 4 that's here. And if I look at the properties of this, I can manually set my IP address and I can manually set my DNS server. So if you're connecting directly to the internet, you would simply choose to use the following server addresses and then use the 208.67.222.222 address and the secondary alternate also in here. And that's where you would manually put them in, and that from that point forward, you're not going to the default DNS server that your ISP gave you. You're now always going to go to OpenDNS. Now, because I'm in a home office using one of these routers, however, I don't have to manually configure anything on all the different computers. All the computers that are in your home office or your home or anywhere that's using one of these types of routers or firewalls are automatically getting their IP addressing and their DNS settings directly from this device. So you're only going to have to change this in one place, and it will affect everybody who connects through your router. That makes it very simple. So for instance, on my network, I have a Netgear router, and it gives you step by step with every single one of these router types exactly where you should go, what you should do to log in, and how you can configure the routing setup. I'm running a Netgear device that's on actually the default network IP address of what I was using before. I'm going to choose my password protector there to go into my Netgear settings, and I'm going to look at the basic settings that I have set up here on my network. And you can see one of the things it says is that, what are you using, an account name or a domain name? I'm not required to use those for my ISP. It does say get my IP address dynamically from my ISP, and it puts it in there. And then it says that domain name server address I could get automatically from ISP, which is where it was set. But since I'm using OpenDNS, I chose use these DNS servers, and you'll notice these are the DNS servers from that OpenDNS website, 208.67.222.222 and 208.67.220.220. And then I click the apply button, and from that point forward, anybody who gets an IP address on my network is going to be using the OpenDNS servers for all the DNS name resolution. That means they will all be filtered. They will all have the same controls I set for them, the white lists and the black lists, and it's all managed from this one central point. So most of the time, you don't have to change a lot. You change it in one place, and now you're ready to configure OpenDNS to allow or disallow access to certain types of content. One of the things you noticed is when we were in our router, it showed us the IP address that our ISP gave us. My IP address for my particular router is something that may change in the future. It's a dynamic IPS. Very rarely are you assigned a static IP address these days. You don't often run into that anymore. Usually there is a pool of IP addresses, and your ISP is just going to provide you with something that is relatively temporary. Generally, these IP addresses, though, stick around for a while. As long as you don't reboot your router and things don't change too dramatically on the network, you'll probably keep that IP address for quite a bit of time. But they do change from time to time. And later on in this video, we'll talk about how you can keep up to date and make sure that things don't change behind the scenes. At the top of the OpenDNS website, it even tells you currently your IP address is 69.243.229.64. So your next step is going to be going to the settings tab and putting in the IP address of this. So you would type in manually the 69.243. In fact, you do it just like this and make sure you get the numbers right. There we go. 229.64. Now I've already added that in here, and I've given it a label of home. So you can see I already have my network already listed in here. Now I've synced up on both sides. I've told my router that whenever you want to do a name resolution, use OpenDNS. And now I've gone to the OpenDNS site and I've said, anytime you see this IP address requesting information associated with the DNS, it's really me and it's associated with my username, James Messer, here at the top. From that point forward, you should use my settings to determine what's really going on this network. If you ever need to change this IP address, you can always click down here under your networks and you can modify how you want to manage it. This is the great part and the amazing amounts of control you get just with the free OpenDNS account. And the one I'm using currently here is the absolutely free one. I will be, in fact, giving them another $9.95 a year for a couple of the extra capabilities. And I'll show you some of that in just a bit. I can choose my filtering level, which means I may not want to set anything specifically at all. You may just want to click high and everything's filtered, or click low and everything is filtered. I went in and customized mine just a little bit. If you choose the customize button, you can look at all of the different categories available to you. So I said, we're going to block all dating. I'm going to block all hate websites. No more gambling websites. I just chose some here just to give you an idea of the types of things that you could choose if you wanted to block some of this information. That now, once you have the categories put in there, I can apply it, and it will apply those blocks to the people on my network. This is really simple. I don't now have to have separate pieces of software in everybody's machine. I don't have to individually manage what every machine can go to. I can go to one central place now and manage everything I'd like to do. Makes it very, very simple to be able to get through those pieces. There's also a section here for security. I mentioned being able to block sites that have botnets or malware on them. I absolutely have turned that on. I want to block against phishing sites that are looking for personal information or login information from me. Absolutely enable those. And block internal IP addresses. Inside of my network, I'm using things like the 192.168. These are IP addresses defined in something called RFC 1918. And that means that inside of our firewalls, these are IP addresses that are very commonly used for what we're doing. You usually don't see those sent across the internet because, according to this particular RFC, our routing devices don't forward those. So we're going to block any of the internal IP addresses to filter out a lot of other things that we might have there. Under the customization link, there's some other options here as well. If you are in the basic account like I have, there's just a few options available to you. If you were to pay extra for the Deluxe account, you get a lot more capabilities, the ability to really edit some of the block pages that you're getting. You've got other customizations and things that you can add in here, but even these are pretty good. I can upload a new image here, for instance. If I don't want this OpenDNS guide showing up, I can choose another image that's on my hard drive, and that's the image that's shown whenever I'm looking through these block pages and search pages instead of seeing the OpenDNS guide message. There's also a guide page message that shows information when a page isn't there. You go to a website that's not there. OpenDNS looks at that and says, let me give you an option here and different things that you could type in. There's also options for block pages here and very simple customization that you can do that says the site is blocked or this domain has been blocked. You can, if this is in an enterprise or larger environment, you can put talk to dad if you really feel that this is something you should do. My kids know that they should be able to do that anyway. And here's the block page for phishing. So even in the basic account setup, still quite a few options here for customization. If you choose the additional capabilities of the account that you can pay for $10 a year, you've got another some additional capabilities on the customization side. But even these are extremely useful, even just the free basic account. I'd like to change some of these customizations just so we can see it whenever we go to a block page and you'll get a feel for how it works. I'm going to choose a logo here, and I'm going to choose some of my mobile classroom logo here. I uploaded a big image. So one of the options you get is the ability to edit the image once you upload it. This is kind of nice. I don't have to make it any particular size. I can specify exactly what I would like this to look like, and how it fits onto the screen. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's see, let's move this around and make it the size just so it fits in there. And that's how it's going to look on my web page once I have it there. That looks pretty good. So let's save those changes, and it's going to take what I've just uploaded and create a new view here. And it even says hit refresh to see your image. I'm going to punch F5 and we'll reload this page up. And when it loads up from the changes that we're going to do, we'll see once it updates itself. There it is. There's the new logo that I have there. I'm going to select my logo and click apply. And it's going to now use that logo. My custom image is saved. Changes may take up to 3 minutes to take effect. So we're going to do some other things in the meantime. For instance, let's go down here to the block page where it says when blocking content, you can specify the message. And I'm also going to put in here, sorry about that, except I'm going to type it properly. There we go. So there's another piece of text in there. So whenever we see a block page, we'll know that that's what that's referring to, that update that we made there. And at the bottom of the page, I'll click the apply button. And now we've created a customization for those pieces. Now, once people are out on the internet and they're surfing around and they get a blog page or they go to one of the OpenDNS pages, they'll see our logo at the top. And if they go to a blog page, they'll see the message we put in there that says, sorry about that. Let's see how our filtering is working now that we've set up a block and we have configured block pages and customized those. And we've got some categories that we're blocking. Let's try going to one. I've chosen partypoker.com here, which is a gambling site. Gambling is one of those categories that I had selected to block anytime it went through. If I hit enter, OpenDNS finds that information and says, hold on a second, before you can go to this site, I want to let you know that we blocked that. It says the site is blocked. Sorry about that. It even puts the note in here, the messages that we had before. If you want to change this, if you're in a larger environment, this may say something like, if you feel this has been blocked in error or you need additional assistance, contact the help desk. Here's the phone number. I've also got my logo showing up here as well. Directly underneath that are these sponsored links. So if this is a situation where you don't want to see any of these advertisements anymore. You can pay OpenDNS $9.95 a year, a very good price, to be able to remove any of the advertisements from these block pages. But that's one of the ways that they're able to maintain this service and still provide it to you absolutely free. So a nice trade-off if you're someone who just wants this free access to OpenDNS. Now that we blocked some pages, it would be nice to be able to see what's been going on my network over time. So let's look at some of the statistics associated with the OpenDNS usage on my network. The OpenDNS Stats tab begins to show you information about what's been going on with recent activity. And you have this chart here that shows us information about what's been going on. This was on all my networks over the last day. So this is always the previous day's worth of content. And for this particular podcast, I turned this on the night before. So you can see the last few hours of content coming through on that network. You can also see unique domain accesses, unique IP addresses that are accessing the network, the request types, which are really more of a geeky DNS type of information, and the top domains that people are going to be able to pull that information out. A lot to Comcast, a lot to Google, for instance, on my network. If you want to see a total number of unique domains on your network, we can even drill down into this and see exactly how many unique domains are there. So a lot of interesting metrics on some of these pages. Also on my stats page, if I go back one, we've got some other things here, total unique IPs, top domains. Maybe that's what you'd like to see, is what domains are people really going to on my network. And you can see them listed here in just a big view. I've got GIMP, I've got Akamai shows up a lot because it's a third party that provides web services for large organizations. So that could even be Google, it could be YouTube, it could be a lot of different organizations. Here's one at apple.com. If you are ever in a place where you really don't want particular things that you're seeing here to ever show up again, you'll notice there's an actions link right here, and you can block this domain or block domains that are similar to this domain. So that's one thing you can do. If you see something you never want to see that on your network anymore, you can choose to block it right from here. So a very easy way to manage the URLs that are going through your network and allows you to determine, should I allow or disallow those URLs from going through. If you'd like to change that later, you can always go back into the customization settings that we have in our settings tab and include them or exclude them individually from there as well. Another nice capability that's included free with this basic account is the shortcuts option. Let's say that you didn't want to type in a big long URL for a particular website, or maybe you'd like to use a shortcut name instead of typing in a long URL. For instance, I'm going to use TMC, and I'm going to choose, every time I type TMC, I want you to go to themobileclassroom.com. Just a very basic piece, and I'm going to create a shortcut there. And there we go. You can see that I've now got TMC that always goes to themobileclassroom.com. Let's try that. I'll open up a new tab. I'm just going to type TMC into my view up here, and I'm going to hit enter. And when I do that, it goes right to the mobile classroom. I didn't have to type in themobileclassroom.com or type in the mobile classroom and type Control Enter. I just typed TMC and hit the enter key, and it went right to the URL that I'd specified. Nice to have those little shortcuts there. It may save you a minute or two. If you have an OpenDNS Deluxe account, you're going to see things a little bit differently. So what I did, I stopped my recording here. I went behind the scenes. I upgraded my account to a Deluxe account, and now I'm back on the same screens we were looking at before. One of the things that you'll notice is different on the web content filtering view is that you have the option to whitelist only, which means that you can really have a very tight set of controls here, and people on your network can only go to the websites that you specify. If you have young children or you have a need to provide that level of control so that they can't possibly go anywhere else on the internet, that's a really nice capability to have. And the cost of $9.95 a year, it's much less than what you would pay for an individual piece of software to go on somebody's machine to be able to configure that properly. That means whatever you put down here, you can decide to never block or always block certain domains. You could say never block, and then you can specify only the domains that you would want anybody on your network to go to. It's a very, very secure way to really customize exactly what people are going to see inside of their browser. Another option you're going to see under the customization is exactly what we saw before with our OpenDNS, and we can put the logos that we'd like in here, but you can now see that you can turn off advertisements. So now when you go to a block page, you're not going to have the list of ads underneath that anymore. Let's see what the difference is now. So if we go to partypoker.com again and hit enter, you'll still get the domain is blocked. You'll still get the logo added and the customization in there that, sorry about that, you can't go to that website. But notice none of those advertisements are down here anymore. So if those advertisements bother you or you just don't want them on these pages anymore, you can simply get your Deluxe account and now they disappear forever. Another thing to consider with the Deluxe account is the amount of time we can go back to look at statistics. In the free account, we were looking at statistics and they were showing us information like these total requests and the top domains that were visited and the block domains that were visited, but you can only go back 2 weeks. If you need to go back farther than that, the statistics simply aren't available to you. With the Deluxe account, we'll now have those statistics available to us for an entire year. So if you wanted to go back months at a time and look at that information, it'll still be available to you in the Deluxe account. OpenDNS is a great service. The fact that most of these capabilities are available for free is really remarkable. And for just a very simple upgrade, you can even add on the capabilities of OpenDNS. If you'd like to learn more about what we're doing on our website, you can always visit us at themobileclassroom.com, where I have links to our Facebook like page and also links that you can join us on Twitter at twitter.com/mobileclassroom. And of course, you can always send me an email directly at james@themobileclassroom.com. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next time on The Mobile Classroom.